Another episode, though, unfortunately, the subject is not here to be a part of it, but one of the more interesting stories I think that hasn't been told on any type of television, the WWE programs, obviously, but something that's long overdue. A look into Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert.
Yes. Yes.
And, this is a guy who unfortunately gets no national television today in any of
Yep.
these retrospectives or documentaries because he was instrumental in a lot of places with a lot of talent behind the scenes and did a lot of great work, but was in a lot of cases in the wrong place, the wrong time for
Yep.
the eventual winners of all the promotional wars and the libraries that are out there now. And he didn't
Mhm.
get to, experience the attitude era that almost everything comes from. But a little bit about the Eddie Gilbert episode from your
Yeah, definitely a passion project, for our team. Something we've always wanted to do, and I'm so glad we did. Eddie Gilbert, one of the great minds of wrestling, and as you were saying, kind of sadly a forgotten figure to a lot of modern fans. And because he did kind of predate the internet age in a lot of ways, and he died kind of before, like the Monday Night Wars. Like, I kind of think like what he would have been like during, I don't know, like WCW Nitro or something, like what kind of role he might have played in that, maybe as a kind of wild Brian Pillman-esque sort of character or something.
yeah.
Um, so this is a big time what if story, I think is what I would frame it. But yeah, he had a debilitating car accident early on in his career that he always suffered the repercussions of, the injuries he had from that. Coincidentally, was the same night as the Snuka Nancy Argentino situation, that car accident. Yeah, and so for him, it was kind of dealing with that pain, dealing with that kind of inherent paranoia that comes with the wrestling industry, being kind of a smaller size guy in a big man's world, and really his love of the business and his desire to really be the booker. I think that was always his dream, was to be somebody who was booking the matches and had a really forward-thinking mind for that. That
Yeah.
sort of be the template for the future. Paul Heyman talks a lot about Eddie being an early and of course ECW there, and what an influence he had on him. And
Well, in Paul's autobiography, did he mention Eddie's name? He said, "A friend of mine asked me to," and that was boom.
there you go. Yeah.
But if you catch him off camera when he can be honest, yeah, he owes a lot to Eddie. And Eddie
Right.
was the first one to see Sting in Mid South before he came to Crockett as a guy that they needed to feature. And you and I talked about for the episode that was the thing. Eddie wanted to be the booker.
Yeah.
Eddie, he grew up, he idolized his father, Tommy,
Hmm.
who was a fantastic worker, not the flashy modern kind of baby face, but the Southern baby face that just everything he did looked good and made sense and he could sell and blah, blah, blah. But Eddie wanted to be his father. He wanted to be Jerry the King Lawler because that's the guy he grew up watching, and the promo style, because that was not Tommy's thing, was promos. And he wanted to be the booker because he was fascinated by it, and he had
Yep.
stood there and stared at Jerry Jarrett with moon eyes like we all did.
Hmm.
Jerry Jarrett is the god of wrestling. And that's what drove him. But at the same time, whereas people think that I am a bit impetuous, or used to be at least back in the day, as far as telling somebody off or saying fuck this or whatever. Eddie, I had a longer fuse than Eddie did. Eddie, if he would get in sideways with somebody about something, generally about his booking or the booking or something related to business, and boom, he's gone. He was out of
Yep.
Memphis 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times, maybe, and back over a number of years. And I think that's what kept him. Maybe if he'd lived to the Attitude Era,
Oh yeah.
he would not have been featured as a wrestler as much as
Yeah.
maybe a Roddy Piper style player
Totally.
coach.
Yep.
And behind the scenes, he would have been in some type of producer or creative role if he could have existed by being a cog in the machine rather than because there wasn't any the Booker by the late
Yeah.
90s.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that's where he would have, everybody would have been trying to draw on his just he had a feel for the business because he'd watched it since he grew up and he understood it. It just sometimes he didn't understand how to be the businessman even though he understood the business.
Exactly. And I think it's all, and what's also fascinating, historically about him too, is that he sort of, he did one of the first shoot interviews ever, kind of getting into the inner workings of the business, which I think came as somewhat of a surprise coming from someone like him who was so dedicated to, protecting wrestling and the secrets and so forth. But he did one of the first shoot interviews, which is very is interesting.
Well, and I can tell you that because we talk about it in the episode.
Yeah.
Eddie and I were the same age, a month apart in age, and I'd known him since we were 15 years old. And he, we were pen pals back in the day when people did that stuff. He'd send me, a picture or a letter. Hey, I'm working for Vince now, up in the WWF, whatever. But concurrently with what was going on the last couple of years of Eddie's life, me and Paul and Eddie were the same age basically,
Yep.
and where I'd just been on the creative team in WCW, and now I'm doing Smoky Mountain, and Eddie has been booking and working in Memphis, and then he had just come off booking Continental, where he got Paul a spot. Also, they've both gone to Philadelphia, and Paul has stayed. Eddie's come back. Point is, we understood that there was a subculture of wrestling fans that were smart, and the epicenter was probably Philadelphia, and there might be 3 of them in Evansville, Indiana, or there might be 26 in fucking Indianapolis, but it was a small market and there was an individual way to reach those people. Those early shoot interviews, Eddie decided to do it before I did. But at the same time, Eddie was campaigning at that point because he was kind of looking to be recognized, which that audience did. So that, somebody higher up on the food chain might say, well, let's give this guy a job. But it wasn't like in those days, it was a trickle theory. It wasn't like you were exposing the business to the outer world. You were exposing the business to the people that it was already exposed to.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
That were hungry to find out more, and they were the ones coming to, unfortunately, in Eddie's position in Philadelphia, that's the audience that was coming to his matches almost exclusively. So to reach that audience, you had to do something like that. Paul did it in different ways, and he was trying to hook into the grunge culture up there, which turns out there was more of them than there was the hardcore fans at that point. And I was, doing the approach of we're down here at a wrestling school, so you have to, in OVW in those years, the late '90s and the video era, you have to kind of acknowledge what's going on in wrestling because people know it's a wrestling school, but you create your own conflicts in that universe. Blah blah blah. But anyway.
That's spot on.
Yeah, who's on the Eddie episode?
The Eddie episode, I have that right here. Oh, well, you're in it.
Well, I mean, once you've got past the star of the show, but I mean, I have a supporting cast.
His brother Doug is in the episode, of course. Ricky Morton is in the episode. I think it might be the first time he's been on Dark Side, and he's fantastic.
I think you're right. Oh, Ricky is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it's like, why hasn't he been on every episode before that? He's great. He was really good. We have a childhood friend, Darla Staggs, in there. Dutch Mantell is in the episode. Todd Gordon is in the episode. Medusa's in the episode, and I think that might be it.
And also, knew Darla Staggs. We were pen pals
Okay, cool.
because she was part of the WFIA. I mean, we didn't like write constantly. I mean, she was
Right.
too sexy for me at that time. But no, she was one of the '70s WFIA era fans, and Eddie actually, I gave you some pictures that might make
Yes.
the cut of
Yes.
Eddie and Tommy being or speaking at the WFIA convention when
That's right.
Tommy had gotten an award. Eddie was still a photographer, so this is kind of again. This all started. Eddie's story started in Memphis at the same time that I was growing up. We were on opposite ends of the territory, so a lot of this stuff is it's nice to see getting a spot on television. Childhood
Yes.
memories.
Yes.